This lesson is about calculating the rate of return for investment properties. There's two different rates of return. There's the apparent rate of return, which is our percentage profit without taking into account any costs. And then after we do that, we'll look at the actual rate of return, which looks into actually taking into account the costs. But we'll have a look at the apparent rate of return first. For these calculations, we're just going to use simple interest formula to find the rate of return, or the interest rate, or the profit percentage. In our simple interest formula, I is going to be the profit we make, P is the amount we invest, R is the rate of return, and T is the time in years. So we've got this scenario where a wealthy teacher is buying a $240,000 townhouse and selling it for $300,000 in a few years' time. We're going to calculate the apparent rate of return. So I'm going to list the elements of my formula, I, P, R, and T, and see if I can find them. So I is the profit. How much profit did the teacher make? Well, they sold the property for $300,000 and they bought it for $240,000. So they made a profit of $60,000. How much did they invest? Well, the property cost them $240,000. What's the rate of return? Well, that's what we're trying to find. And how long was it for? 3 years. So I'll write my formula and then substitute in the values. Okay, trying to get R by itself, we see it's connected by multiplication by two numbers. So I'm going to need to divide the left-hand side by both of those numbers. Okay, this will give me 0.083, but remember that is a rate in a decimal form. So it's really 8.3%. And then I can take this percentage and can compare it to my bank interest rate and see if I should invest in property or just leave my money in the bank in a safer place. Okay, so that's just looking at the purchase and sale price to see how much profit I make. An alternative is to look at the rental income. So I could buy the townhouse for the same price and just focus on the rental income for the year. I'll again have a go at calculating the apparent rate of return. I'll list all of these things, I, P, R, and T. My interest or my profit is going to be my rent. So $270 per week for 52 weeks is $14,040. How much did I invest? Well, $240,000. I'm trying to find the rate, and I'm just focusing on for 1 year. So again, substitute in, write my formula, put in the values. And you should be okay to solve this from here. Rate of 5.85%, which sounds pretty good. It's a pretty good interest rate. So remember, these are apparent rates of return because we haven't taken into consideration any costs. Over the page, that's exactly what we'll do. Calculate the actual rate of return. So the scenarios are quite similar. In this first scenario, it's a wealthy teacher buying the same townhouse, selling it for that same price 3 years yet later. But they also have transfer duty and real estate commission, and they have some real estate, some land, some legal fees, which we're going to say are on the sale for $1,000. Calculate the actual rate of return when costs are taken into account. All right, well, first of all, I better calculate these costs. I know that there's going to be transfer duty. So from the previous lesson, calculate the transfer duty on $240,000. Can't do this, watch the previous video, it's $6,900. I need to calculate the real estate commission. That's on the sale price of 300,000. And again, from the previous lesson, this is 7,950. So what I really need to find now is how much did I buy the property for? So the buying cost is going to be my 240,000 plus my transfer duty. So the house really cost me, I really invested 246,900. How much did I receive for the house? Well, I received 300,000. Take away my real estate commission. And also take away my legal fees. So it ended up costing me 291,050. So now that I've calculated all these costs and I really know how much the property cost me and really know how much I received on sale, I can go ahead and calculate my actual rate of return. So just like on the previous page, listing these things, my profit is going to be the difference between the amount I received and the amount I paid, okay, which is 44,150. How much did I invest? Well, I invested the 246,900, don't know the rate, and the time is 3 years. Okay, so now you can go ahead and write the rule, substitute in, and find the actual rate of return. My actual rate of return is 5.96%. If you compare this to the actual rate of return, the apparent rate of return, it was 8.3. So the actual rate of return is always going to be lower than the apparent because we're taking into account these costs. So our interest rate or our profit percentage is going to be lower. Okay, again, finding an actual rate of return of our scenario where we're looking at rental income. For these type of problems, we're always just going to assume for 1 year. Okay, and I really need to look at what income does he or she receive, and what are their expenses. So I'll read through this problem and pick out the ones that are income. So he buys this townhouse and rents it for $270 a week a year. Sounds good. Incur costs of, okay, rates, that's bad. Water, that's bad. Tenant insurance, that's bad. And management fees, that's bad. So the only income I get is the rent, which is $270 a week for a year to give me my 14,040. And then I need to list these expenses. So I'll underline them as I do them. Those rates, which is $250 per quarter. So I need to multiply by 4 to get the expense for the year. I've got water, okay, $400 per quarter. I have tenant insurance, which is $300 per year, so I don't need to multiply that by anything. And 7% of the rent is taken as a management fee. Management fee, 7% of the rent, so of that total yearly rent. So $982.80. So my total expenses are $3,882.80. Okay, so from here I can calculate my profit for the year, okay, which will be my income subtract my expenses. Take that $14,000 income and take away my $3,000 of expenses, or $4,000 of expenses. End up with $10,157.20. Okay, and that will be the profit that I'll put into my simple interest formula. I'll let you do the rest. So I end up with a interest rate of 4.23%, which is again a lot lower than the apparent rate of return that we calculated in the same scenario of 5.85%. All right, so from here, we'll have a go at these questions. And when you check the answers, probably refer to this and this rather than the answers at the back, which seem to do some pretty random things. All right, good luck.